of Kittens and Broken Things, Chapter 73. As with other impossible things to comprehend, they didn't comprehend, but they tried to accept the impossible in their own ways. Beyond the momentous choice of some newly possible reaper mitosis, because sex and love and all that stuff, then came the practical questions of visitation rights, mistaken identity. Kara had thought they would perhaps have to establish different residences because, obviously. Russ had snorted. "Oh, you should know better, Kara. Kimmon and Kerplunk are going to be fine with an extra Garrus. I won't be fine without being able to see them, and they won't understand if I'm not here. You still have a relationship with Senar. Your Garrus will still have a relationship with me because he'll pine otherwise. I also, silly woman, happen to love you, and I'd miss you. Thanks for saying the same, dummy. By the way, I call the kitchen table the first week, probably, so be prepared." "I didn't think I had to say it. You're so smart. I figured you knew. What is it with you guys and tables?" "You don't know?" "I don't want to know." "Then why did you ask?" Forget it." "How do we explain two Garruses?" "You just did. There are two Garruses now because Hemoris Vicarian is a very lucky man. Short sentence. People come here to see cupcake trees made by a new god of reapers and flying verse. You think they're going to accept that but be unable to accept clones? What are they going to do about it? Protest? To whom and about what? And what would come of that? Nothing. I win. Nobody else loses. They may be just confused for a little bit. It's a new reality, Kara. Get on board." I suspect that's another table reference. Deal with it. Seriously, I have so many ideas. What do we do? Have the two different Garruses wear different colors? He's not going to be wearing much. Think of something else. What do we call them? These are practical questions. We'll figure it out. You have what? 2 different names, 3 potential last names, and about 6 nicknames? We're staying and breaking more furniture. She had promised Garrus that immortality would be a decision they made together, but with new possibilities, turned out she kind of panicked, and Garrus caught on fast. He got suspicious and asked,
"Where's Carousel?"
Around.
"Kara,
Mm,
you didn't.
I did."
Weren't we going to make mutual decisions on that subject?"
She sneezed.
"What?"
She sneezed. I got scared.
"There are no pathogens here, Verse."
They could always develop.
"Not the way Sonar tells it."
She sneezed. I got scared. Now she's going to be immortal. She'll be back when we are.
"You dove for the immortality thing?"
For her. She can also visit Senar, and I'm sure she misses him. She was going to get old and get kitty arthritis and sneeze more, and I couldn't take it.
"And I'm supposed to just accept that you're not going to hit me over the head and I wake up immortal?"
You've still got a little while to make the right decision before that happens. I've got a button to talk to a god. It's nice. Plus, I know I said I'd do whatever you wanted forever and ever, but forever is a real thing now, and I'm your Ava. So there.
"Verse."
Don't you want to live forever? With me?
"Not sure that's the point."
When you figure out what that is, let me know. In the meantime, I suggest not sneezing, getting injured, or getting inexplicably tired.
"Are you immortal?"
No.
Not yet.
It's something we should do together. No hitting over the head.
Or not yet, anyway.
Now you've got it. Keep in mind, death is overrated as a learning experience. I should know.
You sprinted after it the second time.
I meant well. Nobody backed out or changed their minds or tried to change anybody else's mind. Russ told Kimmon, "You and I are going to have the house to ourselves for about 2 weeks, and after that, there will be 2 Garruses, and Carol will be back, and we'll all be together again." Kimmon looked at Garrus and asked, "Will the Garruses like me? What if they don't like me?" Garrus grinned at her.
Take that back. No me would be that stupid. Plus, I don't like you. I love you.
Can he like me too?
Try to stop us.
Okay. So, Kara was going to lose 2 weeks of her life that would pass in a blink, to start a new life she wouldn't know anything about unless she decided she would. Confusing, but not impossible. Blessed. Russ would be happy. 2 Garruses in her life could not possibly be bad. Sanar would have his Manipar, and her Garrus would not worry about losing her to Drell machinations because she was both lost and found simultaneously. She was serene as Garrus told her he'd see her soon, as Sanar told her he'd see her soon, and both were true and not true. Particle and wave in the paradox of added light to an experimental obstacle course. She was grateful she didn't have to explain it to Garrus's parents or sister, and he said he'd handled it. She woke up, or was getting there slowly, peacefully, calmly. She heard the sound of waves and then opened her eyes. Arms were around her. Not Taurian arms. Drell arms. Glowing. Drell arms. She was not Limayeth, not Verse, or she was, and she'd always remember, and she'd miss Garrus, but she knew the other Kara would take care of him. She knew he'd be happy, blissful, and so would the other Kara. Now she was Lasam, Siha, and Dralatem. It might be venom, might be whatever procedure she'd undergone. She wasn't as anxious as she thought she'd be. She was made of stillness and wanting to stay, wanting to know what was present and what was possible. She would live a new life, and miraculously her first chosen path would continue. You missed the sound of waves. His voice was the warm whisper she hadn't heard from him in a long time. The whisper she missed from him, the whisper of confidences and intimacies, his mouth at her ear, the voice he'd been able to speak with when she'd woken from pained nightmares, and he eased her back to dreamless sleep. Being in his arms was familiar. He was her new home. She did miss the sound of waves. She hadn't seen them often. She hadn't spent much of her shore leave on literal shores, but she loved the sound of waves. The fact that she missed oceans seemed to be a tiny thing in the scope of everything else that had happened. What with being newly born, newly created, and being with him. But the fact that he knew it? Huge, pivotal, a burning question and bold. Now she could ask. Now the answer could belong to her, so she asked him, "Please tell me, how do you know that? How do you know everything else you couldn't possibly know?" When I became aware of myself after the crucible, my mind reached for you first. It was my first conscious act, my first connection to reality after dissolving into blue light. I wanted to know about you, and that information came to me. I knew where you were. I knew what you were feeling. I thought that was how it would be, that I would ask a question and the information would arrive. It was the first and most transformative, profound experience of the new power I had. I began to ask other questions with seemingly infinite capacity to sense and formulate as I became aware of the locations I could occupy as a controlling influence. Yet, shortly after my success with you, with the immediate questions I asked, I thought of discovering how Yesed was. My search produced no information. I knew nothing of him or about him. When Hemoris left your conscious awareness, I tried to find him in the same way as I found you in order to aid him. But he was not there for me as you were. I found Hemoris through Citadel biometrics once he left your sight. I found Yesed through mundane Omnitool connection. My immediate explanation as to how I was connected to you seemed to be possible that the AI at the Crucible had clearly read your mind, and I had some of that capacity. I did not question it. I accepted it as necessary and vital, a gift that had begun with that creature violating your mind, and me violating your will, with me hoping that I could continue to cherish the gift of communion with you. Yet you considered yourself severed from me, grieving, and I knew you were not communing with me in the same way. I sought to find a way to comfort you. I used your Omnitool as I had with Hemoris and Yesed. I was undeserving of communion with you, yet I craved and needed the connection to your inspiration, and I thrived upon it. The full answer I formulated as time passed, and I gathered experience and information. I was able to compare the quality of my connection to you to my lack of connection to others. It involved the circumstances of your resurrection, in how you were rebuilt after your death. Ms. Lawson is a genius, but she layered that genius on a heavy framework of Reaper technology Cerberus had secured, at the cost of many of their agents being knowingly or unknowingly indoctrinated. Information that I could access reflecting your perception of yourself extended back only to the moment you were rebuilt enough to function, to become aware of self. You have Reaper technology woven through every system of your body. Dralatem, you are a Reaper. I cannot fail to know every moment of your existence any more than I could fail to know my own. My control over all Reapers included you. Whatever answer she expected, it hadn't been that. complete knowledge of and control over her by crucible fiat? He wasn't a god, he was her god? She choked out, "Still? Right now?" "Yes, always." "Control me? How? How? What do you mean?" "I have not tried. At first, it did not occur to me to attempt to control you. I only felt blessed by communion with you. Once I was aware the potential existed, I did not wish to attempt to control you without your consent. I know how my will works now, how I believe it will work with us. Perhaps now would not be a wise time to demonstrate, but I do wish to choose a time to explore that potential together, if you will allow it." "When have we ever had a wise time? When will that be?" "Perhaps never. Wisdom is gained from experience. We have been, perhaps always will be, the first to have certain opportunities, the first to make certain mistakes." "And now you believe, you know how it could work? Are you saying you might not be able to stop yourself from controlling me?" "That is why you needed to make the choice to place yourself in my arms without any enticements or demonstrations for me other than to have you know that I knew of your hopes and desires, and I wished to fulfill them for you. Control without your understanding was too much of a temptation for me. Impossible to predict the effect it would have upon you. If you would allow a demonstration, we can explore, proving to ourselves what is possible and how it will work. The first would be a verbal command accompanied by my will that you take a simple action to demonstrate how my will becomes yours. The second would be an action where I prove that it is not a matter of words or venom, but purely will on my part. We will discover your response to your will being vacated by my own. The third thing I wish to do would be a demonstration of that potential beyond simple movement. From there, Dralatam, I hope you will begin to feel what it is I want for you, for us. All you ever need do would be to will that I stop. If I can. If my will's vacated entirely as you believe, I won't be able to conceive of the idea of you stopping. You need only feel the slightest urge to have something stop. I will know. You will not need to say it. I will strive to have already stopped before you can form words to ask. I will strive to never take an action that would result in you wishing that I stop. Are you sure you can? You misinterpreted on purpose, teasing. Am I sure I can stop? Dralatem, at this point I wish to confirm that I can start. Now, if you allow, I will attempt it, and we will both learn what control over you means. May I? He was right. That was a huge truth. That would never have occurred to her, and he could fascinate her all he wanted. She never would have guessed. By the way, do I happen to be a Reaper? It occurred to her that he could also make sure it never occurred to her. Sliding weakness began at the top of her spine and traveled down, heart slamming in. a vivid flush rushing to her face. He seemed to no longer worry about undue influence or inability to convince her, his voice at her ear and his knuckles along the side of her throat as he reminded her. You must say yes, Dralatham. Can I run away again? Can you? Where exactly would you run? He seemed intrigued, curious, and not worried in the least. So you could just see out of my eyes where I went, and you could make me decide to run back? I believe so, yes. Do you wish to try that? No, no, she didn't. Simple action, you said? To test? Yes, do that. The breeze from the surf had blown her hair over her face. He said, pull your hair to the other side, over your shoulder. Her hands moved without thought or intention, did as he asked. The skin of her throat was now fully exposed, and his lips moved there, the moment calling shivers from her in several ways. Her movement hadn't felt like anything. Proof of concept, devastating and real in a terrifyingly seamless way. Not the conflicted drag of compulsion, but pure, thoughtless action taken with the casual acceptance of the necessity and benefit of breathing. He said between kisses at her throat, I hear, I feel, I see. Everything you hear and feel and see. You will become thoughtless, mindless. Have faith that I will be thoughtful and mindful, Dralatan. You are safe with me. Have faith also that I have wanted you thoughtless and mindless, and would have made you so long before the crucible. That this is not a new desire or new goal I could accomplish, but the same desire, the same goal reaffirmed and certain. Something that occurred to me as a desire as you gazed at me with sea-green confusion through veiled lashes over a mug of hot chocolate. Something that solidified into a necessary goal over a Panifa board. Something I would have done with venom and whispers, my hands and mouth. The next action you take will be without hearing any words of command, only the effect of my will. I will ask you to move. You will change your position. Are you ready? How could she possibly be ready? Because you are safe with me, Dralatan. I promise you. That's a big promise. One I will keep. Remember, you are precious to me, and I would never harm you. That's an order? That is a suggestion. Are you still afraid? Very much so. If it had been an order, you would not be afraid. What's the difference between you thinking you don't want me to be afraid and something I have learned, something I am learning? There is thought about action, and then there is action. The difference between imagining making my arm move and making my arm move. I believe I have learned control and restraint, but if anything, anyone can make me lose it, That'd be me.
That would be you.
Yikes.
Do you wish to keep your fear?
Do I need it?
Never again.
Are you afraid?
I am apprehensive and have been about the scale and scope of the truth. Your relationship with me has been painful and difficult, and I wish for the pain and difficulty to end. But I require your understanding of truth. I am the same in many ways as I was when I was alive. The same intellect, the same impulses, the same disguised and counted desires that being in your presence, having you in my memory, evokes. If I could be tempted to lie, to take again, it would be in the service of the urge to be yours. Telling you a truth that might make you feel like an owned object, while explaining how I withheld that information from you, from her, from them. Yes, that invokes fear. The possibility that you might will that I separate my consciousness from yours would be unbearable. And I must still risk it. I am fearful of that, of gaining your potential company only to lose it to horror and mistrust. My fear did not stop me from finding my way to you, to us finding our way here. Am I going to be an owned object? Never. That is not what I wish. That is not what you wish. Yet the capacity is there and always will be. You asked if Geth were slaves, and I referred to them as tools. In your case, the potential for you to be a slave in truth is undeniable. Unlike the Geth, you do have will, you do have opinions and preferences, and I run the risk of making a mistake by exerting my control over you, horrifying you before I have an opportunity to convince you that we belong together, that the risk is dwarfed by the potential reward. So if I'm less afraid, you're less apprehensive? Possibly. Feeling what you feel is a gift, and is the experience that has defined and enriched my tenure as a god. I believe the more intention I have toward you, the more control I have over you. What defines you as a reaper cannot be undone. If I chose to have all reaper technology removed from your body, that would still make you more of my intentional creation. You will never be less under my control than you are at this moment. And in this moment, you are potentially entirely under my control. I wish to ease your fears, but in the past moments, Charlatan, you learned of your nature, my nature, how they are entwined, and that made you afraid, but it also made you curious. The image of you running and me catching you. You enjoyed that. I enjoyed you enjoying that. So perhaps we do not wish to dispense entirely with fear, and perhaps it is not possible. I see. And I have always been afraid of you. This I know. So if I ask you, let me keep my fear. Don't change it until it changes on its own. Don't be tempted. Don't take it from me. Let me put it down or hold it tight. Then that is your will. That is what I will do.
But you'll experience that I'm afraid?
Always. And the paradox is that the only way you will be certain that your will is your own would be to experience fear.
So, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And you do not wish to corrupt us.
There is comfort in some paradoxes. I found my connection to you so completely satisfying in communion that you were, as you always have been, exceptional. It never occurred to me to attempt to control you. I am yours, Tralata. I am not separate. What you feel, what you think, what you choose creates our path. I am motivated to keep you separate, keep your will inviolate, to provide me with living inspiration. Once you helped me be the man I wished to be, though I did not always succeed. But I am curious. I do wish to know what power I have over you, what that can mean if you choose to allow me to use it. I've imagined so many ways to touch you, flow through your thoughts, create sensations that were not possible until now. You asked if you could be a disappointment to me. Imagine, Kara, all the ways I can create a moment between us and feel exactly what you feel as you feel it. Being selfish becomes giving, and being giving becomes selfish.
You have enough power over me to make anything happen and make me feel any way about it, and I never know the difference unless you wanted me to.
You know the difference now. I wish for it to remain that way. I wish for you to be able to return always to a state where you know your mind is your own, your body is your own, and you make your own choices.
The logic goes in circles. You took Venom control to gain Reaper control, and now you have control over what you thought you would lose, but now can't lose, though I could try to demand you lose it. But your defining choice remains in the fact that you believed the crucible would result in your permanent death, and in my happily ever after with another man. I did believe all of those things. That my life would be taken, that I would not endure in any form, and that I would be denied both shores and Manipur. I wish to create a circuit of that circle. That requires your trust and faith that I will take your inspiration and give you what you want to experience, and that me experiencing that with you will lead to new inspirations. I wouldn't be here if I didn't trust to your imagination. There's a slight bloom of fear around that statement, like a shallow and painless slice at something living, harmless but demonstrably red with blood and warm water. Like the fear and freedom of running and being caught, like his teeth and lips along the side of her throat. Okay. Make me change my position. As you wish. Tralata. She became aware of physical details that in her absorption in thought and shock she had not taken in. Thought stopped and she was pure motion and execution. The temperature here was a pleasure on her skin,
The breeze something she felt magnified compared to the moment before. She was wearing green and gold and a dress of animated fabric, beautiful and seemingly alive, somehow spring and fall, the green uplifting, vibrant, the gold seeming to follow gravity. Then she was turned to look at him, her knees to either side of his thighs in soft, warm sand, her hands on his shoulders, aware of the caress of fabric flutters and aware of the way he looked at her with open adoration. He looked younger. He looked hopeful. There was a gleaming cobalt moon visible behind him. He was glowing, flowing gold-limbed, green and black. My original colors were black and silver. I find I have grown fond of green. I do not wish to change back. I wish to move forward with you. She was able to think again after the movement was completed. A rising sense of potential. Tabula rasa. A blank canvas she didn't want to blot with the wrong thoughts. She could think new thoughts. Began to wonder why she would want to be fearful at all with this chance. He deserved enthusiasm she hadn't allowed herself to feel, and she said, "Well, you're in luck. I love you." His hand moved to cradle the side of her face, his thumb along what she believed was the same path where a tear had fallen at the crucible. His eyes closed and then opened. "We once discussed consent. You believed I could not give it, that I had no real choices. In many ways, Charlatan, you also may have had no real choice. Everything may have been in Effect from the moment I saw you and knew you to be Siha, the moment where gold light surrounded me in your mind. I can find your memory of that moment, my memory of that moment, and line them up together, and they harmonize, whisper, and sing to each other in impossible ways, defining how we are so different and how we are so alike. I cannot explain what we both saw, what we both felt in symmetrical and improbable faith in a moment that set the beginning and the course of our path. I see rightness. I see fate. And if those are true, perhaps you had no choice, and neither did I. As I do not wish another choice, I am content. I cannot offer you freedom from your Manipar, but that moment, finally shared, is all the answer I require as to whether or not I belong to you. She smiled a gentle curve and said, "Well, I'm only how old now? A few weeks? I suppose I don't qualify for age of consent anyway." He smiled at her in such a way that meant she was woefully ignorant of reality again, and she said with dawning realization, "You didn't." "I promised you truth, Tralata. I did." "You kept on. Garrus has." "Yes. I am the only person who would be able to detect a difference between you. You are older than the few weeks of your counterpart, but you are still only approximately 2 years old.
Why? His face hardened to the lines of the relentless hunter he was behind any other guise, and she recalled his comment about the fact that the more intent he had regarding her, the more control he had, and the man was intent. He said,
Look at me and ask me if I would ever give up the woman who told me yes.
I thought the point was for me to be less frightened.
Yet I promised you truth, and some truths do not bend to that goal.
How much of my mind is... How much do you know?
Everything. The stream of your moment-to-moment sensations, the patterns of the synthesis of your thoughts, all your experiences since you became viable under Project Lazarus. Beyond that, as you have access to your original memories unaltered, so do I.
Isn't that distracting?
Being distracted by you began as a hobby and is now a calling.
What is the difference between her and me?
You were molecularly and in consciousness identical at the moment of her creation, divergence only possible after that moment. She is also a reaper inherently, and then more so by definition as she is a creation of my intent. The difference I can detect is in the altered routing of her information. I cannot sever my connection to her, but I can place all of the information she generates into a blind directory that is accessible only through need-to-know conditions, where I choose that I do not need to know. That began at the moment I gave her to Garrus. My connection to you remains unbroken. You are, and have been, part of me since the Crucible.
You gave her to the original Garrus?
For symmetry, I gave the original Garrus to Hemoris. They did see each other first, as Hemoris pointed out to you. The two duplicates are together, newly formed and at inception indistinguishable from their counterparts. Nobody received pity in any form, all symmetrically suited to their chosen destinies.
Oh, wait. So, now the duplicate Garrus is
A reaper. So is Hemoris after his alterations. So is the original Garrus. As I removed the systemic effects of his bond to you so he could bond with Hemoris. These truths I tell you, what you tell me, who we are, belong to you. You may tell these truths or not tell them. That is your choice. My hope is that you are happy. They are happy. And eventually the procedural and cost truth that they feared I would or could exact never materializes and fades as a concern. All still face the potential for further enhancement, treatment, or chosen improvement. And the knowledge that I may have power over them might make them more cautious than they need be to embrace that opportunity. She has not experienced my control over her, only that I possess knowledge about her from unknown sources. Perhaps you would not wish for the nature of our relationship to be known, to have your autonomy potentially questioned. Perhaps you do not wish to meet yourself or him again, and we will live in seclusion, perhaps here, perhaps elsewhere, devoted to each other. Who I am Now, this body was created with the intent that I be entirely yours. I wish to spend all my time with you, as you allow. When I interact with them, it would be with another mind, another body, one that does not glow. They are my family, and I will look after them as I will Yesed. You are my heart, and if you choose to keep me entirely to yourself, I would be pleased. I have attempted to preserve your options, and will abide by whatever you wish in your contact with whomever you choose, to tell your truths as you require. So, all of their information goes to blind directories? Yes. Any information I receive about them will be standard communication, security, or health concerns through channels other than their direct perception of their lives. They have their privacy, their new lives, eternity if they wish it together, and I will keep them safe. I will be at their service. This way, Dralatam, if anything happens to any of them, they could be restored to each other complete from the moment of their death or infirmity, with no loss of memory. They would lose nothing of their experiences with each other due to misfortune. They will have access to immortality and whatever they wish in service. But for now, I chose to move one step at a time. So if I wish to interact with her, and I will, and she will, it will be with a self that loves her, but knows he has no right to want her. She is no longer Manipar promised. That right belongs to you, my Manipar delivered. That self can experience what it is to be yours through shared link with me and will not be denied love, inspiration, or purpose. Time can grant everyone security in their choices and build new, divergent, and distinct identities as they find their feet on newly possible paths I will facilitate. I wished for each person to feel as though they were gaining more than they lost. She will know that her existence did not keep Hemoris from the man he loved, or her bondmate from expression of that love. You will know that Garrus is adored, and that he in the woman that is with him will have no reason to fear my pursuit. I did not wish for any one person to believe they chose the wrong path to follow or remain upon. Why no blind directory for me? I considered it. I discovered I am vehemently opposed to the idea, and here is where I fear my breaking point is defined, where I risk denying you a choice. The idea of having your will under my control does not make me fear. Any mistake I make we can endure with your forgiveness, but the idea of you denying me your communion summons the greatest resistance in me, and that intent may be uncontrollable on my part. I likely will not permit it to happen for even a moment. I do not wish to be blind to you in any way. When I say I do not wish for it to be so, that is on the order of saying I did not wish for Erica to be tortured and killed, or that I did not wish for you to sacrifice yourself. All of me stands opposed, though I am aware some of me should allow you that choice. That is where my lie would live. I would ask you to consider allowing me to demonstrate, to learn, to know your thoughts, know how you feel in each moment. Trust to my imagination and control. Trust to the strength of your curiosity and mine to carry us, if not to wisdom easily, then to discovery not possible before. You are my music of the spheres. I believe it is possible, Dralata, to share what I feel with you as well. We all have fears. Hopefully none of them materialize if we are careful, if we are brave, if we are patient. If you had chosen to die a natural death with your bondmate, if you were finally gone, I knew I could, certainly would, at some point of deferred temptation, recover you from archive, create you whole, and begin again with you. I can imagine myself desperate for your inspiration, playing the memory of your life over and over, falling to solipsism of Tufira, and losing my connection to my responsibilities in my despair, finding no life in living, extending that detachment and dullness to others. I do not believe I can express to you what it means to me to be able to reach out to you and find you always there. I do not think I could bear an existence without that experience. I will not lie to myself or you and promise you that you always would have had a choice. I could promise you I have learned the value of free will, and I fear that in itself is a lie, one I tell myself because I wish it to be true. What I do know is that I believe it is my duty as your Manipar, as a man who loves you, and as a god with the potential to control you, that I wish and need to let you know you are loved, supported, and desired. I can now do that for you between one heartbeat and the next. Part of me wishes to do that because I do not believe you should doubt or fear me, so why should I permit doubt or fear? Is it not a Manipar's duty to find their mate? Make them feel their mate's devotion and love is more than enough compensation for each difficult step they took across the burning sands to reach them. Make them know they have found their home and their path. What is the difference between swaying you with words and devotion, swaying you with venom and whispers, swaying you with will to express what is my truth when I know you love me and I love you? Why must I choose to forego any expression of those potentials if we can do it together? Is that not what I promised you? What I can now give you in every moment if you will it, if I will it? If you wished what was possible only in what was previously real, that remains to the bliss and bond of the woman who is still with Garrus. With us, real will be redefined. She whispered back his words with a shiver down her spine. Look at me and ask me if I would ever give up the woman who told me yes. Or the woman who told me no. These are my bare truths, Dralata. I believe in ways that cannot be questioned, that I am yours and you are mine. I am offended by the idea that our ownership of each other could be questioned, and that questioning is defined as a sin against fate and rightness. I will act to oppose any attempt to sever or doubt my right to you and your right to me. I believe I am the best potential man I can be with your inspiration and influence, and without you, I would be lost. I believe we will make the galaxy a better place. We will gather power to ourselves, and we will use it as we must, and ultimately grow to use it wisely. I believe we will make mistakes, but we will learn from them. I believe I am here of my free will. I believe the concept of will must become a cooperative thing, and not something owned by either of us. Giving must become selfish, and selfish must become giving. Possibly the most selfish act I have performed in my life was to take your place at the crucible. Possibly it was the most giving. Somehow, Dralatem, it is both simultaneously from your perspective and mine. There is a new inspiration to be forged, that of harmonizing moments that create new things between us. Now would be an unwise time to demonstrate my control over you, but we have determined that we are unwise, and I am not responsive to reason on the subject of you. He leaned in toward her, pulled her by the waist against his chest, and said in her ear, "A great joy of discovery in knowing you, Darlata, is how very hard you had to fight how much you wanted me. I have my moments of sharp, distinct desire where I know exactly where I want to touch you and what I wish to see in your eyes. You are not a woman of images, but of emotions that leap and churn and fold in on themselves in the dark. So much of you was lost to me the moment you saw the lethality, the resolve you required for your mission. So much of you was lost to me as we walked our seemingly blind but brilliantly lit and dark path together. We win either way, Dralatam, if you are found by me, if you remain lost to me. I will claim each moment of my brightly lit dreams of you, and you will claim each moment of your undefined and roiling dark. Kiss me, because you wish to, because you love me, because I love you." She waited for the thoughtless flow of motion, but it didn't come. So she asked him, "Not in order?" "Not an order. Something else. If you will indulge me. Please, Dralata. Please indulge me." He moved his lips to hover near hers, his nose sliding along hers, his voice a vibration along her spine, the breath of his words warming her lips. Apprehension and fear, even the will to tease, melted and boiled off as she heard him, felt him, as her heart pounded and pulse sped up, and she reflexively felt she should laugh, tease, back away. And then that she didn't have to do those things anymore. She closed her eyes
brought her hands to the side of his face, felt the ridged, cool to warm curve of his textured frill, moved her lips to his with a soft hitch of lost breath. There was venom, dizziness, tyranid, and the spiraling, centered avalanche of the ability to say yes and remember the denied and hidden moments where she had wanted to touch him. She had packed those desires behind a reinforced door, guarded by the denial she was capable of generating, creating a dark, cramped, and foreboding place to approach. Permission to approach and release the warding made that place in her coalesce and expand. It began to spin like a small, dark mass at the center of her. It spit and shuddered and then sputtered into light, a star able to form and burn. Had she thought that? Or had he thought that? Or had she thought it and he knew it? Something neither his nor hers but his promised. Inspiration and execution of their combined wills, creation and discovery and appreciation shared. Warmth from the internal sun spread, literal heat with a metaphoric, different from reverie, different from tyranid, his arm around her waist as she lost her balance and leaned in, and he caught her, held her, spreading scattered pleasure like sparks along her skin, in her and around her. It was a slowly building, whirling, but not disorienting ascent into clarity, ethereal light, and filigreed pleasure that exalted. This wasn't the deepening, darkening, drowning current of sex or drugs, but something new. Communion with every cell of her body, blessed. Going nowhere, needing nothing, an inexhaustible continuum. The kiss was composed of serene timelessness, his hands reverent, accompanied by the measure of the surf, breeze, and flutter of fabric. He ended the trance with the whispered prayer of her name, and his lips moved down her throat, and the brilliance of the created sun between them receded until she could become aware of other things. The moon was gone, the sky was lightening, and the sun was rising over the ocean behind her, warmth on her back, and rays casting light on his beatific face. Together they felt like heaven. She murmured softly, "He who ascends to his throne." He kissed the space between her collarbones and answered, "She who rules at his side." Well, that could win every argument ever.
Then I suggest you do not argue with me.
Those words, I mean, I understand that sentence, but I don't see how it's possible.
Then it is good that I enjoy arguing with you, Tralata.
She tilted her head back, laughed more, and then looked at him, at them, and then she noticed. She was glowing gold along with him, the color swirling and leaping between them where their skin met, looking like sunspots and corona, arcs forming magnetic loops
and whirls.